Pedagogy, right? Right, okay, so maybe it's pedagogy, right? Or what about pedagogy? Well, I'm aware that pedagogy is one of those words, right? It sounds like it requires medication, or at least a Kleenex. Here, I'll even ham it up for you, right? I'm gonna sneeze it, ready? Pedagogy, The Sneeze, by Catalina Talero. Me. Pedagogy, oh my God. Thank you, I really feel so much better now, thank you. Well, anyway, now that we know that pedagogy is not, you know, a virus or some sort of rare skin infection, I'll tell you what it is, right? The art, science, or profession of teaching is patient. We all know pedagogy doesn't just happen in a classroom, right? It happens in all kinds of contexts. We are all life learners and teachers, right? Every one of us in this room and beyond this room. We teach all the time. And the classroom is sort of the least of it, right? Well, I'm going to start today off by telling you a scary story about you. Well, actually, it's a scary story about you and about me and about everyone we know. And I'm going to tell it to you by citing some statistics and also, you know, showing you a PowerPoint, because what would TEDx be without statistics and a PowerPoint? Right? So let's start with this great quote. The percentage of children in middle childhood living in low-income families, both poor and near poor, has been on the rise, increasing from 39% in 2000 to 42% in 2009. That's already not a really great statistics, folks. This is coming from Columbia University. Great source, right? If you want to take a look at what it looks like visually, this is what that looks like. But 2009, right? The darker the state is, the more extreme poverty for children in that state. 2009, a lot has changed since then, right? This is a great quote coming from Mayor Michael Bloomberg. Everybody else is paying and suffering because of their suffering. He was actually announcing it's actually coming from 2011. So now we're getting a little bit more up to speed. We know so much has changed inside of that time. Most of us have experienced a great series of losses inside of that time. I know I have, right? Children certainly have. So if that doesn't scare you, I think this next quote will. The poverty rate for kids in this country will soon hit 25%. Now we're no longer speaking about children in low and middle income households. No, now we're speaking about children in the United States of America. Soon hit 25%. And this quote is from back in March. Right? So a lot has even changed since March. And if the rest of it doesn't scare you, this quote should. The poverty rate for kids in the country will soon hit 25%, and that's the largest American generation to be raised in hard times, the Great Depression. So what's happening to children today can only be compared, their experience can be compared to the Great Depression. I want to see what that looks like in terms of competencies, because after all, hey, if kids are poor these days, it's tough times. But if they have basic competencies, if they can read, if they're good in mathematics, we really can't be that concerned about them. They'll do fine one day, right? Unfortunately, that's not the case. This information shows us a little bit about competencies for children who are living in poverty. The source is great. It's the it's the Department of Education for the United States of America. And every time you see a red color bar is the latest. It's 2010. It's information for 2010. So when you look at the bottom two bars, you're looking at reading and math competencies for 3rd to 8th grade for homeless and impoverished children in the United States of America. And when you look at the top two, you're looking at children who are impoverished and who are homeless in 8th to 12th grades. And as we all know, ladies and gentlemen, some of the most important decisions that we make about how we are going to live our lives, how we're going to integrate ourselves into the state and how we're going to integrate into civil society, those decisions happen in 8th to 12th grade. And the very top bar, that very top bar is competencies. And we're having trouble pulling even at around 30 to 40% for math competencies, ladies and gentlemen. Under that is reading competencies. So we're at 30% when it comes to reading and math competencies for kids in 8th through 12th grades, ladies and gentlemen. So if the rest doesn't scare you, That should be a concern. And that is a scary story about you and about me and about everyone we know. And so it begs the question, what about the children we're losing, right? What about, more importantly, right, the students we're losing? Where are they going? What are they learning? Well, now I'm going to tell you a scary story about me. As it turns out, I was very fortunate, very honored to have the opportunity to win a State Department grant to go to the Andean region and work as a scholar and a fellow for a year. And this story comes from that time because during that time, I was briefly kidnapped. And if you want to know more about the details of that kidnapping, you're more than welcome to visit my Tumblr. You really should know how these things happen. It can happen easier than you think. It was one of those taxi cab things, right? And what I'm going to tell you today is how I escaped. So when the second man got in the cab and he braced me down, it was amazing. Like, he only did it with half of his body, and I guess I'm small, but in any case, I mean, I can fight, you know? And I couldn't even move. I was amazed. I had nowhere to go, and I started panicking. And I realized, like, my panic isn't going to mean anything. That's not going to get me out of this situation, so I calmed down. The man got in the cab. He immediately hit me in the face, and my glasses broke, and so I had my eyes closed and everything, so I just thrust my face forward into the light of the cab. Because, I mean, if my eyes were already closed, I decided, well, you know, I'll keep them that way. And I said, look, I can't see you. I can't identify you. And if you want, I'll teach you. I'll teach you how to steal from me. Just please don't rape me. I'll teach you everything you need to know. Because it's actually not that easy to steal from me. It's not that easy. Needless to say, all of this was happening with my eyes closed and in Spanish. And so I said, look, open up my wallet, and you go through the cards in this order. The color should be this color order. So go through the cards in this order, and I'll show you. And he said, you know, the passwords. And I said, okay, here. And I did them in the right order. And I said, those are all the passwords. What do those words mean? I said, they mean it was a place that I lived. It was a place that I lived. And then, you know, they drove around, and they were threatening me this whole time. But gradually, they started trusting me. And gradually, they started believing what I was saying and listening to the lesson. And I didn't tell one lie. And so I finally got them to a place where they actually allowed me to transfer the information, and they took it in. All of this was done. Suddenly they said, okay, when we stop, you must run, and you cannot look back. And so they let me go, and I never looked back. So what I'm going to ask you to do is to please join me in looking at this and the image that I'm going to put up after it, right? Because what I'm here to do today is call you to action. That is the point of my talk. I'm here to call you to action when it comes to this weirdo word and everything associated with it: learning, education, children, right? Our future. When you look at this photograph, you know, it's interesting. This is a very modest classroom. These are kids that don't really have a lot of money, clearly. I mean, if you put all their clothes together in a pile, right, probably wouldn't have cost, I don't know, maybe $20 originally, American, maybe, if that, right? Modest circumstance. Something else going on that's more important, right? And it's not power, politics, and it's not prestige. It's pedagogy. Now, what's happening in this next photo? Unfortunately, a very similar thing is actually being put on display for you. I really want to make sure to give full credit to Black Scratchy Lines, the individual that posted this, right, on unrestricted license, inviting the use of this photograph for commercial purposes, because, ladies and gentlemen, things are taking place right under our noses, right? This child, unfortunately, has a very different strategy. I mean, if you want to get quantitative about it, we can see, right, that the clothes this child probably cost maybe $30 to $40 American, something around. It's a good quality knife. I've seen worse. So unfortunately, the option isn't politics or pedagogy like that. I'm sorry, it's not politics or prestige or power or anything like that. It's actually pedagogy. That's what really matters. Pedagogy isn't necessarily restricted to expensive programs. No, it happens all the time. right? It's what we do. It's who we are. It's how we operate as human beings. And I'm going to ask you, please, to join me in saying this next quote that's on the screen now out loud on the count of 3. Please join me. 1, 2, 3. Tell me, and I'll forget. Show me, and I may remember. Involve me, and I'll understand. You know, coming from this proverb, there's another great P word, proverb, very powerful word. But I guess the question that I want to ask you today is, what are we involving those learners that we're losing? What are we involving them in? That's our responsibility. The answer to that question is all of our responsibility. It's certainly this nation's responsibility. So again, my talk today has been a call to action because pedagogy is power, right? Mine is pedagogy at all time. At all times, our investment in children's pedagogy is actually a future for all, because our lives really are in our children's hands. And our lives are in our children's hands because of what they learn. Whatever that is, it's going to come right back to us. If they suffer, that'll link directly to our suffering. Pedagogy is more important than grades and than tests or school tiers. And why? Right? Because pedagogy exists beyond borders, happens all the time. Pedagogy is learned behavior. And kids will acquire it whether we teach them well or not. Please put pedagogy first in the voting booth, no matter who you vote for. Vote for pedagogy first. Do it at home. Put pedagogy first at home. During summer, after school, online and off, and in everything you do. Because pedagogy is power. It happens all the time. And kids can't help but do it. So I want to thank you very much for your time. Call you to pedagogy first. Thank you. Gracias, muchas gracias.